Well, hello everybody. It's story time, and it's Friday night. It's pretty late. It's actually almost 11 o'clock. I ended up staying later up with Rob, working on his truck longer than I planned to, and so. But I promised I'd make you guys a video for Saturday. So, uh, if I remember correctly, it was about the two times my first times getting pulled over. Once licensed and once before I was licensed, I had to do with my go-kart. So I'll tell you the go-kart story first. So I was about 10 or 9 when my dad bought a go-kart for me. And it was like a Dr. Pepper Indy car looking thing, one wheel, had a 3-horse Briggs. But the sprocket and chain was almost the same diameter as the tire. So this thing would mile an hour like crazy, but didn't have any power at all getting up the hill. And I wrecked it somehow, sliding around, broke the fiberglass body off the frame, and ended up riding it around, just open chassis kind of a thing. And my buddy Cameron lived out. Oh, we lived north. We lived above McCarran, which McCarran runs all the way around Reno and Sparks. At the time, it only went like Sparks to Reno over the top. And north, there's Virginia Street in the center, and North Virginia's up there. And we were more over to the west, and it was Kings Row was above it, and there was like above the highway was like a shopping center, little small shopping center with like at the time it was Scalari's Warehouse Market, which is kind of like a Safeway, a grocery store. Had a big parking lot. It was real like gradual incline, and it had an on-ramp onto the highway, and then a big wide shoulder that wrapped down the highway and around to another main road that went out to some west, like towards Truckee or Mogul or whatever, out towards like Boomtown, if you're familiar with Reno. And it was out towards Boomtown. There were some neighborhoods out there, and so it's probably, as the crow flies, maybe 5-7 miles out to the neighborhood from my house, which was by this Scalari's Market area, up Kings Row area, out to Cameron's house. And so we had another buddy that had another go-kart, and his was a little 2-seater with the 5-horse Briggs, and it had a low gear, so you could haul people around with it. It looked kind of like a dune buggy, but 2 seats. Something you'd build out of like, Popular Mechanics, kind of the magazine used to have like a kit to build it. So it was like a kit one. And one summer night or day, it was probably like a Saturday or something, my mom was gone. My dad was probably off working. My buddies and I decided that we were going to pack up our 2 go-karts and we were going to head off to Cameron's house and go drive around Cameron's neighborhood and mess around for the day and then come back home. So I brought like my Walkman and my ZZ Top cassette and my headphones, and I brought like a tire patch kit, and we brought, I think, a bicycle tire pump and a bunch of stuff, and David brought his, and of course we brought snacks. And we took off from my house, and my house is about 2 blocks away, and so David lived down Kings Row about 2 blocks, so he came up, went across the highway, and then went up to my house, and then we came down from my house, and went up to the parking lot across the street to this warehouse market, or this Scalari's Warehouse Market parking lot, and I couldn't climb very far, so he would push on the back of my go-kart, and I had 2 uprights where the wing used to be for the Indy car. I had mounted it was like a back bumper, so he pushed me up the top of the thing, and I caught the top of the parking lot and hit the top of the highway, and then went down the highway, and I could just take off like a rocket. And at that time, I think the speed limit was like 35 maybe on the highway on McCarran. It wasn't very fast. It was like 30, 35. And I was, just motoring down the shoulder, and then we hit the first turnout in the next neighborhood, which is abandoned, or not, it hasn't been built yet, not abandoned, and we were going through the non-developed streets and heading around, hitting sidewalks and crossing roads. And every hill, Dave would push me, and I'd hit the speed, hit the downhill and the straight line, and just take off and wait for him to catch me. And he'd come up behind me and push me. His cart went like 15 miles an hour, and I don't know how fast mine went, but we were cruising along, and we got out to Cameron's house, and we were driving around having a good time messing around. And some buddy in the neighborhood, I think in a Honda Accord, got mad, and we were like, he was chasing us around trying to catch us, and we were cut through people's driveways and off through yards and then neighborhoods and just zipping around out there. And then finally we got bored and told Cameron we were going to split, so we bailed and headed back up to the house. And so it's like, we'd been gone for several hours, probably 4 hours maybe. I think we were probably like 12 maybe. I don't know how old we were. We're not too old. And we ended up coming back up the highway. So we're coming back up the highway, and we're on the same shoulder, the same side. Now we're going against traffic. And Dave's pushing me all the way up the top. And we, I don't know how he stopped us, but I think a cop came down the Scolari's parking lot off ramp and was just sitting there and waited for us to get up there to him, if I remember right. And he just basically pulled us over right there. And he said he'd been looking for us all day, and he didn't believe the reports were true, that there was, kids in go-karts driving on the side of the highway, and apparently reportedly passing people in the shoulder at speed. And that would have been probably my cart going downhill, passing people doing 35. I might have been doing like 37 or 40 or something. But still, I can imagine driving along and look over and see some kid going by passing you at speed. And but he didn't believe that we were out there. But we were out there. And he asked us where we were going. And we said, up to that house right there. And so I think he followed us up to the house and then made sure we were done driving around. And that was it. That was no big deal, that one. But that wasn't super scary, but thinking back on it now, if I had kids, I'd probably think it was pretty cool. Let my kid do it anyway, but that wasn't very cool, but it probably wasn't too smart, but we didn't think anything of it. Back then you could do stuff like that. It was the 80s. You could do whatever you wanted. So fast forward a couple years, and I ended up with my dad helped me sell my first car to these guys, and I ended up with a 59 or 58 Chevy or it was a GMC short wide box. Big back window, full deluxe cab, chrome dash, chrome gauges, like the whole thing. Big window, super nice truck. I took a couple leaves out of the front, a couple leaves out of the back, and I was running a 15x6 stock white 6-lug rims that came on it with poverty caps. And in the back I got some 15x8 that would have come on like a 72 Chevy Blazer. They looked just like the 6-inch, but they were 8 inches wide, and I ran poverty caps on that, and BFGs around. And the truck had a big block Pontiac. I think it had a 389 and a truck 4-speed, and it had Dana 44 with 410s. It had a locker. It was a pretty cool truck. Sat low, had a tonneau cover. It was white, had like really fine pinstripes on it that were red. It was really, really slick truck. Lowered, nice looking pickup. Chrome grill, chrome bumpers. It was nice. And I was out. Cameron and I were out cruising around in that. I was probably 16, I think. I think Cameron was 15, or just turning 16. Like we were close to the same age. I think I was a sophomore in high school, but we were out by Cameron's house again, and there were some other kids we knew in high school that lived in an apartment complex, condo thing close by, and we were out there. And of course, all of us gearheads are like doing burnouts and messing around. And my truck wasn't quiet. It had, glass backs on it and twice pipes, and, with a 4-barrel Holly, and it was, rev it up, dump the clutch kind of thing. And we were probably burning rubber and doing the kind of things kids do. And between Cameron's house, at that time, I think he moved up by my house. So we were out visiting our friends out there by the out by our high school. Actually, it was out the same spot, and we were out there, and there weren't that many street lights. And I remember there were some hills that, it's like rolling hills on this highway, and one in particular came down and then went up to a stoplight, but at the bottom of these hills, like the subdivisions lined them, or there or future subdivisions, the highway was out there, the roads out there, and they had curbs and sidewalks and driveways where they were going to enter into a new subdivision, and we were down on one side, backed into like one of the subdivision things. We were just sitting there BSing about cars and girls probably and all sorts of stuff. And remember, we didn't know what time it was. It was getting late. It's probably 10 o'clock. Could be about the same time it is right now. And, it was a weekend or whatever, and we should have been home, but I think we probably told my parents I was at Cameron's house, and Cameron's mom, I don't remember if she worked late or what, but we were just out doing our own thing. And I remember seeing a car in the distance coming across with headlights and went in front of us in the other lane going that way. I didn't think anything of it, and there was nobody out there. It was like a street light over here and one way over there, so we were down in the dark, and I kicked the lights on, fired up the truck, and off we went onto the highway. We were motoring along, heading up to the intersection where this road, I think it's Robb Drive, I can't remember, but it ends up hitting McCarran, and we were going to go up McCarran towards my parents' house, or where we lived, which was ironically the same subdivision up here, or the same warehouse, market, Scalari's thing, Safeway market up there, that same parking lot. We were heading back up there because that's where we grew up. And I remember sitting at the stoplight waiting for it to turn. And I looked in the rearview mirror and I could see like the silhouette in the traffic light. It was really dim. It was dark outside, and I could see like the silhouette of like a light bar from like a cop behind me. And I was like, oh, what's that? And at the time, Cam was like a cadet in the Sparks Police Department kind of thing. And so he turns around and looks, he goes, oh, that's a cop. He's going to pull us over. Because he was tucked in so tight I couldn't see his headlights. He's like, oh yeah, that guy's going to pull us over for sure. And I was like, well, if that's going to happen, it's going to be for something good. So I'm watching the light for the traffic going across in front of us. There's no traffic, and I'm watching this light, waiting for the green light to turn yellow. And I want to turn yellow, and I'm like, it's going to be for something good. So I stick this sucker to the floor, and I'm revving it up. And as soon as the light turns green, I sidestep it. And we get the green arrow, and I let the clutch out, and it was like tires are smoking. And I grab second gear, and we're going up the highway. And of course, he flips on his Christmas lights, and we're flying. Like I'm third gear, fourth gear, just flying up the highway, and this old GMC truck is just screaming for all it's worth. And ironically, there's no traffic coming the other direction on this highway. And Cameron's like, pull over, it's going to be a felony stop. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, just pull over. So I pull over the side of the road, and cops come from the other direction as we're coming over. And they kind of like surround us. And we're like, oh no, and this cop comes up like angry, license registration. I give him my license registration, and then they don't say anything to us. We're just sitting there in spotlights with cop cars around us, and we're below other houses in the subdivision. There's like a concrete wall right here, like a hollow tile CMU wall for another subdivision. So we're kind of like on the top of this hill of the highway, and it's late. And I was like, oh, that for a burnout? That's crazy. And nobody says anything to us. And then this younger cop comes up, and he says, do you know why the Sarge say anything why he pulled you over? And I'm thinking, well, it's kind of obvious. And I said, no. And he said, well, there was reports of robberies in this area. And he's like, were you over in this area? And we're like, yeah, we were there. And he said, well, the burglaries and the reports included, a loud old white truck, which I've got an old white truck that's kind of loud. And I'm like, well, we were there. And he's like, would you mind if we search the vehicle? Can we check in the back, open the tailgate and, look in the back? Because I guess stuff was stolen. I'm like, yeah, sure. So I climb out and pull the chrome chains off and slide the tailgate down, and of course it's a wood bed and a tonneau cover, and there's nothing back there, like nothing. And they're like, "You haven't gone anywhere else?" We're like, "No." And they're looking around the flashlights and they're checking the truck out, and then they're like, "Oh, this thing's pretty cool. It's a clean old truck. What's your plans with it?" And I was like, paint it black, put flames on it. I don't know." And then the sergeant comes up and he's kind of mad and he goes, "You know what time it is?" And we're like, "No, it's late." And he goes, "We have a curfew." And he's like, "And you're up past curfew," kind of a thing. And we're like, "Oh." He goes, "Where are you going?" I go, "That house right there. Next to that house with the lights right there." And he's like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah, we live right there." And he's like, "All right." And he let us go. I don't remember what much went on other than that, but that was, at the time, I didn't really think much of it, but probably doing the burnout and leaving the scene, it probably was the cop, that probably was a cop coming down the hill in front of us, and when I kicked the lights on, he probably saw that, and then we took off. He probably spun around thinking that we were obviously suspicious vehicle, but we weren't doing anything suspicious other than laying some rubber and acting like idiots. But yeah, hindsight, I guess, is I probably would have pulled me over too if I had that same report. But I mean, we never heard what happened to the people getting their stuff stolen, but it certainly wasn't us. But yeah, that's it. Those are the two stories. Same road, a few years apart, on a go-kart, and the second time was in, an old truck. But yeah, that's it. Anyway, happy Saturday.